Restraint over audacity of the month-long shelling and killing at the Bangladesh border by a fragile state like Myanmar proves Hasina government's impotence to safeguard the sovereignty of the Ummah due to subservience to her colonial master Britain. On the night of September 9, a mortar shell fired by the Myanmar army killed a Rohingya youth named Iqbal, 17. Earlier on the same day at noon, a Bangladeshi youth's leg was blown off by a mine explosion in the no-man's land bordering Tumbru. But how regrettable it is that even though the country's sovereignty is threatened by month-long aggression and firings by Myanmar inside Bangladesh, this treacherous regime has not expressed any strong reaction to them, let alone resisting that civil war-torn fragile state. This has stunned and angered the people of the entire country. The treacherous Hasina government has termed it as an internal conflict of Myanmar within their border and sought the intervention of the United Nations and the international community. The Hasina government has shown its ugly face in the past by abandoning the Rohingya Muslims and supporting the butchering Myanmar army. When the Rohingya Muslims fled the hell of Myanmar and took refuge in Bangladesh, the traitorous Hasina government caged the Rohingya refugees and provided security to the Myanmar army so that they would not pose any threat to Myanmar. Not only that, they dishonored the honor of our Muslim military by sending them to parade in Myanmar with the Kafir genocidal army. So no matter how much the Myanmar army invades the border of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina will never take a strong stance against them because both Hasina and the Myanmar military junta maintain their loyalty to their colonial master Britain. Thus, the Hasina government is serving nothing but the geopolitical interest of her master, which has always backed the military junta of Myanmar against US interference through Aung San Suu Kyi. Thus Hasina has testified before the head of the Labour Party Keir Starmer in London on Saturday that she is serving her master's regional interest by securing the Myanmar regime. She told him that Bangladesh is exercising the utmost restraint despite spillover effects of the conflicts inside its territory. PM Hasina, Bangladesh is exercising restraint over Myanmar border tension, Dhaka Tribune, the 17th of September 2022. On the other hand, colonialist America's so-called interest in Rohingya genocide and their repatriation is not out of her regional geopolitical interests. The sanctions on Myanmar military by the US were never due to any iota of sympathy for the Rohingya refugees, but rather as a ploy to exploit the plight of the Rohingya Muslims to exert pressure on the Myanmar military junta. US Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken recently said that his government is working to significantly increase the resettlement of Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh. So the US is trying to keep the Rohingya refugee issue alive so that it can put pressure on Myanmar's British-backed military junta. Sadly, the persecuted Rohingya Muslims have become the hated victims of the geopolitical conflict of the Kafir colonialist Britain-US. Even BNP does not have the courage to take a strong stand against the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar or the military intervention of the Myanmar army on the Bangladesh border because, like Sheikh Hasina, they also play subservient politics. Therefore, like the ruling party, BNP also wants the intervention of the United Nations and the so-called international community to solve the Rohingya crisis in line with US interest. This is like asking the wolf to protect the sheep. What more we can expect from these traitor secular rulers who are always devoted to protecting the geopolitical interests of their colonial masters US Britain at the expense of the oppressed Rohingya Muslims and the interests of the country? O people, Rohingya Muslims are our brothers and sisters, and we cannot fail them due to the impotence of the subservient secular rulers. Rasulullah, peace be upon him, said, "A Muslim is a brother of another Muslim, he will not wrong him, nor surrender him, to the enemy, Bukhari and Muslim." The destruction of the caliphate, and the imposition of the artificial nation-state ruling system on us is the fundamental reason that has pushed this honorable part of our Ummah into the abyss of horror and darkness. Know that Muslims lived in Arakan since 8th century CE and were pioneer to embrace Islam in this subcontinent, and from 1430 to 1784 the Rohingya Muslims ruled the Arakan state with the help of the Sultan of Bengal. Being a part of the upright Ummah, they were at the front line during the anti-British revolution in this subcontinent. The Buddhists compromised with the British imperialists, whereas the Rohingya Muslims did not. Thus, before departing from this subcontinent, Britain marginalized the Rohingya Muslims and left them at the mercy of the Myanmar army. So, we cannot abandon them, O Muslims. It is fard, obligation, upon us to stand by the side of our persecuted brothers. We need to reject this slavish secular leadership and strive for bringing back the second Khilafah Rashida, rightly guided caliphate, state based upon the method of the prophethood, which will adopt the true interests of the Rohingya Muslims and provide them protection and sanctuary. The imminent Khilafah will liberate them from the cage of this inhuman secular nationalist system and integrate them into our society as our brothers. The Khilafah will also not hesitate to mobilize its army to defend and rescue the persecuted Muslims even inside Myanmar by bringing it down to its knees by Iznillah. Allah, SWT, says in the Quran. And if they seek help of you for the religion, then you must help. Al-Anfal, 72.